A young Solomon, son of the legendary King David, inherited a kingdom poised for greatness. Faced with an unprecedented opportunity, what defines a king's legacy when offered everything, and how would one pivotal choice shape the destiny of an entire nation? As the venerable King David neared his end, he laid upon his son Solomon a solemn charge. In 1 Kings chapter 2, verses 2-3, David commanded, "Be strong, act like a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires. Walk in obedience to him and keep his decrees and commands." This was no mere paternal advice, but a spiritual mandate, a covenant whose blessings were profoundly conditional, placing an immense weight of expectation upon the new king. With David's passing, Solomon swiftly moved to secure his nascent reign, demonstrating a decisive will. He strategically addressed threats to his throne, from the aspirations of Adonijah to the lingering influence of figures like Joab and Shimei. These assertive early actions quickly established his authority, ensuring a period of stability and peace that would allow the young kingdom to flourish under his undivided rule. Yet Solomon's early reign was marked by more than political acumen. It was profoundly rooted in spiritual devotion. 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 3 declares, "Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of David his father." This was not a passive inheritance, but an active commitment, a genuine desire to uphold the divine laws and principles that had guided Israel, laying a righteous foundation for the extraordinary blessings yet to come. As Solomon embarked on his reign, a unique spiritual landscape defined Israel. While the sacred Ark of the Covenant, representing God's direct presence, rested in a tent in Jerusalem, the ancient tabernacle of Moses, a powerful symbol of divine encounter, resided at the prominent high place of Gibeon. This arrangement, a remnant of a time before a permanent temple, meant that Gibeon stood as the most significant site for public worship and grand sacrifice in the land. It was to this revered location, steeped in generations of devotion, that the young King Solomon journeyed, understanding the profound spiritual weight of his destination. The journey to Gibeon was not merely a physical one. It was an act of profound spiritual intent. Upon arrival, Solomon demonstrated a devotion befitting his new throne. There, on the vast outdoor altar, he offered an unprecedented 1,000 burnt offerings. Imagine the scene. The colossal altar ablaze, the night sky illuminated by the roaring flames, the air thick with the rising smoke of countless sacrifices. This was no perfunctory ritual. It was a magnificent display of earnestness, a king pouring out his heart to God through an offering of extraordinary scale. Solomon's devotion was undeniable, a testament to his sincere desire to honor the Lord and secure divine favor for his fledgling reign. As the last embers glowed and the sacrificial smoke slowly dissipated into the silent night, a profound stillness settled over the high place of Gibeon. The immense effort of the day, the sheer scale of the offerings, had left the king and his retinue physically weary. Yet, in that quiet aftermath, Solomon's spirit remained acutely aware, open to the divine. It was in this moment of deep reverence, amidst the fading echoes of worship and the hushed expanse of the ancient sacred ground, that the temporal gave way to the eternal. The stage was perfectly set for a supernatural encounter, a direct communion between the young king and the God he sought to serve. As the last embers glowed at Gibeon and the heavy scent of sacrifice lingered in the night air, King Solomon found himself in the embrace of sleep. But this was no ordinary slumber. In the quiet depths of his consciousness, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream, as recorded in 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 5. This was not a waking vision, filled with blinding light or thunderous pronouncements, but a profound, immersive experience within the sanctuary of his own mind. Yet its impact was no less real, no less divine. It was a direct, intimate encounter with the Creator of the universe, setting the stage for a choice that would echo through history. What would God reveal in this sacred, dream-born meeting? In that ethereal, unearthly space within his dream, Solomon heard words that defied all human expectation. The voice of God resonated, clear and unmistakable. "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 5 lays bare this astonishing offer, a blank check from the Almighty. Imagine the weight of such an invitation. No caveats, no limits, no preconditions. Wealth beyond imagining, unconquerable power, eternal life. Every conceivable earthly desire was suddenly within reach. This was not merely a benevolent gesture. It was a profound test, a divine inquiry into the deepest desires of a new king's heart. What would you, in Solomon's place, dare to ask for? Confronted with such an unfathomable offer, Solomon's initial response was not one of greed or ambition, but of profound humility. He first remembered his father David, acknowledging God's great kindness shown to him, who walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness and uprightness of heart. 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 6. Then, turning the gaze inward, Solomon expressed his own perceived inadequacy. But now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, but I am only a little child, and do not know how to carry out my duties. 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 7. It was a sincere, humble self-assessment, a king not puffed up by his recent ascension, but deeply aware of the immense task ahead, and his own inexperience. Solomon continued, his thoughts fixed not on personal gain, but on the vast responsibility entrusted to him. He recognized the sheer magnitude of the people he was called to lead. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 8. This wasn't just a kingdom. It was God's chosen inheritance, a vast multitude whose well-being rested heavily on his youthful shoulders. He understood that governing such a nation required more than military might or political cunning. It demanded a divine capacity, an insight far beyond human understanding. The burden of this sacred trust became the justification, the very foundation for his impending request. What kind of leader would prioritize his people's needs over his own desires? Then came the pivotal moment, the defining request that would forever mark Solomon's legacy. With an understanding born of humility and a heart burdened by responsibility, he finally articulated his desire. So give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people and to discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this great people of yours? 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 9. This was not a plea for wealth or power, but for the very essence of divine wisdom, an understanding heart, a discerning mind. It was a selfless request, prioritizing God's people and God's justice above all else. This singular choice, made in the depths of a dream, would unleash a torrent of blessings upon the young king. What makes God say yes to a king's prayer? In the quiet solitude of Gibeon, within the profound depths of Solomon's dream, the divine presence responded. The young king's selfless request resonated deeply with the heart of God. Because you have asked this thing, the divine voice affirmed, as recorded in 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 10, and have not asked for yourself long life or riches or the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern justice. Behold, I do according to your words. This was no ordinary approval. It was a profound validation of a heart aligned with divine purpose, a king who understood that true power lay not in personal gain, but in the righteous governance of God's people. God's pleasure was evident, not merely because of the request, but because of the pure intention behind it, the one gift that made Solomon the wisest man ever. As the divine affirmation settled upon him, Solomon received the primary and most astonishing gift. In 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 12, God declared, I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. This was an endowment beyond human comprehension, a spiritual infusion of intellect and insight that would set Solomon apart from all rulers before and after him. It was an understanding heart capable of piercing through deception, unraveling complex dilemmas, and delivering justice with an unparalleled clarity. This wisdom was not merely academic knowledge, it was a profound, practical discernment, a direct answer to his humble prayer, forming the very foundation upon which his legendary reign would be built. When you put God first, what unasked blessings follow? Yet God's generosity did not end with the grant of unparalleled wisdom. As a testament to his overflowing grace, God promised blessings Solomon had not even dared to request. In 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 13, the divine voice continued, "I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that no king will be your equal during all your life." This was a divine principle in action. When one prioritizes God's kingdom and his righteousness, all other necessary things are added. Wealth beyond measure, honor that would resonate across nations, and even the prospect of a long life were now Solomon's, a magnificent bonus for a heart singularly focused on serving God and his people. How a dream transformed a king's destiny. As the first rays of dawn touched the high place of Gibeon, Solomon awakened from his profound dream. The vividness of the encounter, the clarity of God's voice, left no doubt in his mind. This was no mere dream, but a divine audience, a true encounter with the Almighty. The weight of his new wisdom, the reality of God's promises, settled upon him. His first act, recorded in 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 15, was to return to Jerusalem. There he stood before the Ark of the Covenant, the very symbol of God's presence, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings, confirming his acceptance of the divine mandate and his renewed devotion. The dream at Gibeon had irrevocably transformed his path. How did one choice shape the wisest king's entire reign? Fresh from the profound encounter at Gibeon, Solomon's divinely granted wisdom was immediately put to the ultimate test, not in matters of statecraft or military strategy, but in a deeply human drama that would forever cement his legacy. Two women, both claiming motherhood of a single living infant, stood before the young king in his court in Jerusalem. Their pleas were desperate, their arguments entangled in grief and deceit, for one of their children had died in the night, and a living child remained. The emotional tension was palpable, a crucible of raw human despair and cunning. With no witnesses and conflicting accounts, Solomon's judgment was required to pierce through the veil of falsehood. His solution, audacious and chilling, was to divide the living child in two, giving half to each woman. It was a decree designed not for execution, but for revelation. The shocking proposal from the throne sent a ripple through the court. Instantly the true mother's heart cried out. "Please, my lord," she pleaded, "give her the living baby! Don't kill him." But the other woman, whose child had perished, callously agreed. "It shall be neither mine nor yours. Divide it." In that moment, Solomon's wisdom shone with unparalleled brilliance. He declared the first woman the true mother, for only a mother's love would sacrifice her claim to save her child's life. This profound discernment, recorded in 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 28, resonated throughout Israel. The people stood in awe of the king, because they saw that God's wisdom was in him to administer justice. This single verdict, born from his Gibeon request, transformed their perception, affirming that God's own insight now guided their young ruler. Beyond the courtroom, Solomon's wisdom manifested in an astonishing breadth of knowledge. It was not merely the sagacity to judge disputes, but an expansive intellect that touched every facet of existence. 1 Kings chapter 4, verses 29 to 30 declares that God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight, and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. His mind, a reservoir of divine revelation, authored 3,000 proverbs and over 1,000 songs, works that explored life's deepest truths, the intricacies of human nature, and the wonders of the natural world. From the cedars of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of walls, and from beasts and birds to reptiles and fish, Solomon possessed an encyclopedic understanding of God's creation, as noted in 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 33. This intellectual prowess was a direct fulfillment of God's promise, showcasing a king whose gifts extended far beyond the throne. The renown of Solomon's wisdom could not be contained within the borders of Israel. Its fame spread to the farthest reaches of the ancient world, drawing leaders and scholars alike. Among them was the legendary Queen of Sheba, a powerful monarch who embarked on an arduous journey to Jerusalem, determined to test Solomon with hard questions. 1 Kings chapter 10, verses 1 to 3. She came with a vast entourage, laden with spices, gold, and precious stones, a spectacle befitting a royal challenge. Yet Solomon answered every question, leaving no mystery unsolved. Overwhelmed by his insight, his opulent palace, his orderly court, and his lavish provisions, the queen declared in awe, "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true. But I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told me. In wisdom and wealth you have far exceeded the report I heard." 1 Kings chapter 10, verses 6 to 7. This global testimony validated God's promise of honor, demonstrating that Solomon's Gibeon choice had indeed elevated him above all other kings. The zenith of Solomon's early reign, and perhaps the ultimate physical manifestation of God's favor, was the construction of the temple in Jerusalem. This was the sacred task his father David had longed to complete, a permanent dwelling place for the Ark of the Covenant, a spiritual center for the nation. Enabled by the peace and immense resources that flowed from his divinely granted wisdom and the prosperity it brought, Solomon orchestrated its construction with meticulous detail and unparalleled grandeur. For 7 years, the finest materials and craftsmen labored, transforming David's vision into a magnificent reality. The completed temple described in 1 Kings chapter 6 stood as a testament to God's presence among his people and a lasting monument to Solomon's wise beginning. It was a tangible legacy, directly linked to that pivotal choice at Gibeon, yet even such a grand achievement would later cast a shadow when the king's heart began to stray. The reign of King Solomon had ascended to heights unimaginable, a golden era marked by unparalleled wisdom, immense wealth, and profound peace. Yet even as the magnificent temple in Jerusalem stood as a testament to God's favor, a subtle, insidious peril began to cast its shadow. The very blessings granted at Gibeon, the riches, the honor, the global influence, slowly twisted into temptations. God's promise of a lengthened life and an enduring kingdom had been conditional. "If you walk in my ways, and keep my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked." This vital caveat, once a guiding principle, began to recede into the background of Solomon's opulent court. Prosperity, while a gift, brought with it the unseen danger of complacency, and the allure of worldly power started to overshadow the singular devotion that had defined his early days. The path Solomon walked, once straight and true, subtly began to diverge. In his pursuit of regional stability and political influence, Solomon engaged in a strategy that would prove to be a grave spiritual misstep, forming alliances through marriage. The Bible records in 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 1 to 3, that Solomon loved many foreign women, including princesses from Moab, Ammon, Edom, Sidon, and among the Hittites. These were nations the Lord had explicitly warned Israel against intermarrying with, stating in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 3 to 4, "Do not intermarry with them. Do not give your daughters to their sons, or take their daughters for your sons, for they will turn your children away from following me to serve other gods." Solomon took 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, a move politically astute in the eyes of the world, yet a direct and flagrant violation of divine command. This wasn't merely a lapse in judgment. It was the beginning of a slippery slope, a gradual erosion of the spiritual boundaries set by God. As Solomon aged and his vast court swelled with foreign wives, their influence began to exert a heavy spiritual toll. The Bible tragically recounts in 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 4, "As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been." The king who had asked for an understanding heart to discern good from evil now found his own heart swayed by the allure of foreign deities. His disobedience manifested in the construction of high places, altars on elevated grounds, for the worship of these pagan gods. He built altars for Ashtoreth, the detestable goddess of the Sidonians, for Chemosh, the abhorrent god of the Moabites, and for Molech, the horrific god of the Ammonites, whose worship involved child sacrifice. These actions were a direct affront to the God of Israel, a stark betrayal of the covenant. God's patience, though immense, was not limitless. The Lord had appeared to Solomon twice, reinforcing his covenant and issuing clear warnings against idolatry, as recorded in 1 Kings chapter 9, verses 6 to 7. Yet, despite these divine encounters, Solomon's heart remained hardened, pursuing the very practices God had forbidden. In 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 9 to 10, we read, "The Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice." Although he had forbidden Solomon to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's command. The consequence was swift and devastating. God pronounced judgment, declaring in 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 11, "I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates." Though tempered by mercy for David's sake, delaying the full impact until after Solomon's death, the prophet Ahijah dramatically illustrated this impending division by tearing a new cloak into 12 pieces, giving 10 to Jeroboam, one of Solomon's officials, signifying the splitting of the kingdom. As Solomon's life drew to a close, surrounded by the very opulence and wisdom he had amassed, a profound regret settled upon him. His reflections, captured in the book of Ecclesiastes, echo the emptiness of a life that had strayed from its divine purpose. In Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 2, the poignant lament rings out, "Meaningless, meaningless," says the teacher, "utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless." The man who had once humbly asked for an understanding heart to govern God's people, and whose wisdom had astonished the world, now saw the futility of his later pursuits. The grand palaces, the vast riches, the myriad pleasures, all that he had toiled to achieve without prioritizing God, ultimately felt hollow. This final, heartbreaking confession stands in stark contrast to the pure, selfless desire he expressed at Gibeon, a tragic testament to a heart that, despite its immense blessing, had allowed itself to be led astray. Solomon's journey began with a choice that echoed through eternity. At Gibeon, faced with an unprecedented divine offer, he did not ask for wealth, power, or personal glory. Instead, his heart yearned for an understanding mind, a discerning spirit to govern God's people justly. This selfless request, this prioritization of divine purpose over earthly gain, unlocked a floodgate of blessings, elevating him to a stature unmatched by any king before or since. His choice serves as a powerful testament to the principle that when we seek first God's kingdom and His righteousness, all other things are added to us. What does this profound moment at Gibeon reveal about our own hearts? When faced with life's profound choices, when presented with our own blank check opportunities, what do we ask for? Do our requests reflect a deep desire to serve God and others? Or are they rooted in personal ambition and fleeting desires? The power of Solomon's pure request challenges us to examine our deepest priorities, for in them lies the true trajectory of our lives. His initial path illuminates the profound blessing of aligning our will with God's. Yet, The story of Solomon does not end with the glory of Gibeon. God's promise of riches, honor, and a long life came with a critical, often overlooked condition. If you walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days. 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 14. This unseen condition, this call to sustained faithfulness, proved to be the ultimate test of Solomon's wisdom. His initial wisdom, divinely bestowed and powerfully demonstrated, did not exempt him from the ongoing spiritual battle against temptation. The very blessings God poured out, immense wealth, unparalleled power, and a multitude of foreign alliances, became the crucible for his downfall. Solomon's tragic deviation reminds us that a strong beginning does not guarantee a faithful finish. It is a sobering lesson that even the most blessed and wise among us are susceptible to compromise if we do not remain vigilant, consistently choosing obedience over convenience and devotion over worldly allure. The path of faith is not a single decision, but a continuous journey of choosing God's ways, day after day, through every season of life. The life of King Solomon is a narrative of breathtaking promise, unparalleled glory, and profound, heartbreaking regret. It began with the divine encounter at Gibeon, where a young king, full of humility and a genuine desire to serve God, made a choice that transformed his destiny and the destiny of a nation. God answered his selfless request with wisdom beyond measure, showering him with riches and honor he never sought. Israel flourished under his reign, and the magnificent temple stood as a testament to God's presence among his people. But the shadow of deviation loomed, subtly at first, as political expediency morphed into spiritual compromise. His many foreign wives, a direct violation of God's clear commands, gradually turned his heart away, leading him down a path of idolatry and disobedience. The warnings of God, given clearly and repeatedly, were tragically ignored. Ultimately, Solomon's opulent life ended not with celebration, but with the somber realization captured in the book of Ecclesiastes. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. The man who had everything, wisdom, wealth, power, and the favor of God, discovered the emptiness of it all when his heart strayed from his Creator. Yet even in his regret, Solomon offers us a final, hard-won truth, a timeless conclusion that resonates with every seeking soul. In Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13, he declares, "Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man." This is the enduring lesson from Solomon's epic journey, the power of a pure heart, the peril of unchecked desires, and the paramount importance of sustained faithfulness. His story challenges us to examine our own lives. What choices are we making today? Are we pursuing ephemeral pleasures or eternal truths? Are we allowing worldly influences to subtly turn our hearts away from the God who blesses us? May we take to heart the wisdom of Solomon's entire life, not just its glorious beginning, but its cautionary end. Let us strive to remain steadfast in our devotion, to fear God, and keep his commandments, for in this alone lies true fulfillment, and a legacy that endures beyond the temporal. If Solomon's story has inspired you to reflect on your own path, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps us bring more powerful biblical stories and life-changing lessons straight to you. We also encourage you to share your thoughts. What stood out to you most about Solomon's journey? Leave a comment below. We love hearing from our community. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and family, because these timeless lessons are meant to be shared.